Good evening and welcome to the November 6th, 2025 Parks and Recreation Commission regular hybrid video meeting. The time is now 5 o'clock. I am Ashley Hay, Parks and Recreation Commission Chair. Tonight's Parks and Recreation Commission meeting is being brought to you in person at the Mercer Island Community and Event Center and by Zoom. The Zoom video of this meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded to the city's YouTube channel later this week. Welcome to all and thank you for joining us tonight. Commissioners, please turn on your microphones. Will the city staff please call the roll?
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Cohen?
Here.
Commissioner Markson?
Here.
Commissioner Struck?
Here.
Commissioner McCarthy?
Here.
Commissioner Bretman? Vice Chair Westberg?
Here.
Chair Hay?
Here.
Thank you, Chair.
City staff, is there anyone who has signed up for appearances that wishes to address the commission?
Yes, Chair, we have 3 public appearances tonight.
Great, thank you. Individuals wishing to speak live during the appearances portion of our meeting may do so by telephone, via Zoom, or in person at the Mercer Island Community and Event Center, provided, however, they have registered their desire to speak with the city admin staff by 4 p.m. today. Our city admin staff will call on you by name or telephone number when it is your turn to speak. This is the opportunity for anyone to speak to the Parks and Recreation Commission. All remarks will be addressed to the commission as a whole and not to individual commission or staff members. If any person makes personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks, or who becomes boisterous, threatening, or personally abusive while addressing the commission, I may request that the person leave the meeting. When it is your turn to address the commission, be sure to speak audibly and state your name for the record. Your comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Staff will provide you with a 10-second notice when your time is about to expire. Once your time has expired, I will thank you for your comments and move to the next speaker or the first item of business. And I'll note that sometimes that 3 minutes goes really fast. If you aren't able to finish your comments and you would like to give a written or email copy of those, please just send them to Raven or myself and we'll get them distributed. City staff, please admit the first speaker.
Thank you, Chair. Matt Hall.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Matt Hall. I'm a member of the Mercer Island Rowing Club, along with a couple other folks here too. I've spent more than 20 years involved in rowing, both in Olympia as a high school student, in Los Angeles area as an undergrad, and in Cleveland as a medical student, and been part of clubs as a coach, and running clubs, and as well as just a rower. I want to speak a little bit on kind of location of a club in the hopes that the Mercer Island Rowing Club would be able to row at a park here on Mercer Island. First off, boats are huge. They're about 60 feet long, 65 feet long. We just moved one a couple of days ago from Mount Baker. In order to do that, we have to have essentially a semi-sized trailer. It's about 55 feet long to drive the boats around. And then you have to be able to lift the boats up, carry them down to the water, and be able to launch them from the water. And to launch them, you either have to walk them into the beach and kind of climb into them, or put them on a special dock that's only 6 inches above the water line or so, and then be able to get into them that way. So when we're looking for a place to be able to go and a place to be able to row, it kind of has to accommodate the specifics of the boats to be even a possible location. So you have to be able to navigate the trailer down with a pickup truck or something like that. And West Mercer and East Mercer are pretty difficult to be able to move a trailer around, especially in some residential neighborhoods along places like Groveland Beach or Clark Beach Park or places like that. You'd have to be able to move the boats from the trailer down to the water. If it was just once, it wouldn't be too hard if it was a tricky spot. But when you go to regattas and are going to competitions, then anytime a team would go to a competition, you'd have to move the boats. And so if you're going up a really narrow, steep path with curves around trees, it'd be hard to maneuver a 60-foot boat if there's not ample space to do that. You have to be able to store the boats. And so there has to be enough space at a location to be able to have a place to securely keep the boats, away from wind and tree branches and other folks messing around with them and stuff like that. So have to have enough room to store them. They might be 60 feet long, but they're only about 1.5 feet wide and a foot deep. So you can stack a bunch up and they don't take that much of a footprint, but you have to have the 60 feet to be able to swing them around and move them around and walk them in. And then you've got to be able to launch them. And so in order to be able to launch a boat, you have to have at least 60 feet, 65, 70 feet of open beach space to be able to just fit the boat into the water and either have a dock or a beach that you can walk down to without a big bulkhead or, swimming barriers or things like that. So just today I was out at some of the other, the Groveland Beach and Clark Beach parks, and they have a lot of barriers that would make it pretty difficult. But, Calkins Point at Luther Burbank doesn't have a lot of those barriers, and it would make it a whole lot easier to be able to row from Calkins Point. We could be able to get the trailer down to that area. We'd be able to walk the boats where we need. I think there'd be places to be able to store them, and would be able to launch from the beach from that area too.
10 seconds.
Love to chat more if you guys had any other questions, but appreciate the opportunity.
Great, thank you.
Next, we have Shannon Leversedge.
Hi, my name is Shannon. I previously, many moons ago, was managing the Canadian rowing team that went to the Olympics in '04. So I'm well versed in rowing. Was a rower myself in university in Canada, and would only love to bring the love of the sport to this community. George Pocock, who helped Boys in the Boat go to the Olympics in '36 from Washington University, has a famous saying where he would always say the best part of the sport is to feel the experience of letting it run. And it's a magical space where every rower in the boat comes together, is doing everything together to have this amazing Zen-like moment that I can't describe, but it is pretty amazing. The community of Mercer Island is one that is always behind one another, community-oriented. The sport that we hope to bring is multi-generational, so we would be accommodating students and those of us that may no longer have our 20-something legs. It is accessible to all, so low impact, also available for those that may not be able to row due to any personal constraints. Anybody can partake in the sport. You don't have to have experience. And the wonderful thing about rowing for our youth is that even if they burn out of a sport or no longer due to injury, they can easily transfer to rowing because it doesn't often start until you're in 8th grade. And it brings an amazing amount of opportunity for university scholarships, or you say college here, which is amazing. There's D1 to D3 in almost every college in the United States, which is a huge opportunity for our youth to succeed in school and athletics. So with that, I just wanted to, I guess, communicate the advantages that we all see as having it here. It's a very quiet sport. It's loved by all. Taking in nature and having so many generations able to access it is why we all love it and why we're all here today to support the cause.
Thanks, Shannon.
Yes, so I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, we have one other public appearance via remote.
Okay,
That'll be Paul Burstein.
great.
I will let him into the room now.
All right, welcome, Paul.
Hello, everybody. So glad to be able to join you remotely. I'm a Mercer Island resident, Paul Burstein, and I want to talk about pickleball. So I want to give kind of a background on what stacking is. It's very different from other sports like golf or tennis, where you show up with your group. And for tennis, you're playing for about an hour, golf, maybe 4 hours on a fast day. Pickleball is much faster. The average game lasts about 15 minutes. So if you think about Luther Burbank Park, you've got within an hour about 32 to 40 games being played. The whole idea of stacking is to allow a rapid flow on and off the court. So you've got groups of 4, sometimes singles playing 2, first come, first serve. So they stack in order. The way the game originally started was much more social. And the whole idea was mix everything up. So mix partners, mix groups of four. So you were constantly playing with people with different skill set. The game has changed. It's much more competitive. And people like to come, like Ryan's wife, and just play with their group of four. And that's fine. It doesn't mean that you just randomly place your paddle in a stack. You can group your paddles by your group of four, or if you're playing singles, with two. And then you just go onto the court when it's your time. This works really, really well. It means that if you don't have a complete stack, let's say it's my turn to go and I've only got 3 players, me included, ready to go out on a court. All you have to do is say, need 1 player, and usually somebody who wants to get onto a court quickly will come and play. So it's a very egalitarian way to manage the flow of people on courts. If I know the proposal in the policy is to be able to reserve for private groups for 2 hours, and think about that displacement on that court for that long of a time for a group of people to play versus the other people who are there and playing. So the main thing is stacking works to be able to get people in order out onto the courts and do so rapidly. So within a period of time, you get to play as many times as possible. I think most of you know how to reach me. Be happy to answer other questions, and I'll be watching diligently about your discussion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, if there are no further appearances, we will move on to the first item of business. The first item on the agenda is the staff liaison report and planning schedule update. For that, we welcome Recreation Manager Ryan Daly.
Good evening, commissioners, and thank you, Ryan Daly, Recreation Manager. Waiting for that to come. There we go. Awesome. Thank you all for braving the weather outside. You may not have noticed, but our generator kicked on a couple of times while we've been in here. So all is working well this fall, which is kind of where I lose some sleep sometimes. But couple of updates for the commission. Mercerdale Park, thank you to Chair Ashley Hay for shooting me a photo this afternoon and reminding me to bring this forward to the commission. We are doing some concrete repairs out there, as well as some other areas of the park system, including here at the community center. But we have a lot of root heave and buckling pavement, specifically at Mercerdale Park. You may have noticed that if you've attended some events and whatnot there. That's tree roots that are popping up the pavement or the concrete in some of those areas. And those areas include the plaza near the street, also near the pergola, and down by the recycling center. So those areas have been cut out and are being replaced with new concrete. One of the challenges you have with pouring concrete is weather. So we're hoping at some point in the next week or coming weeks that we'll be able to pour the concrete and have those areas replaced. But that is the extent of those repairs there at Mercerdale Park. Town Center trick-or-treating. Whoo, it was a wet one. But despite the weather, it was a hit. We had a lot of people come out. This was the first year we've actually done this event on Halloween. Mixed reviews. It's not going to happen every year, but it will happen the Friday before Halloween, or if Halloween happens to be on a Friday, it'll happen on that date. Staff from a number of different departments took part alongside 60 town center businesses. This was the most participation we've had out of island businesses, and unfortunately it was pouring rain, but it worked out really, really well. And a special thank you to the Mercer Island Chamber of Commerce. They're our partner in promoting and setting this event up. A spooky fact, probably for parents, we handed out roughly 40 pounds of candy just from the recreation team alone. So awesome event, terrible weather, but still lots of smiles. So it went very well. A couple of upcoming programs and events. Open Art Studio, there is one of those dates left for this year, and that's on November 21st, which will be watercolor greeting cards. And we do have a number of these open studio art opportunities heading into or once we get into the new year. So more information will be provided on those opportunities. I'm not going to go through all of these, but we do have a number of autumn programs that are taking place. Many are focused toward the youth. Little challenging to get out in weather like this. We're seeing great numbers, coincidentally, along with these activities with our indoor playground. We try to match those times up so that parents can do both activities. Going very well, as I said. Seeing probably double the numbers we saw last year for indoor playground. So word's gotten out, and that's going extremely well. Gosh, I can't believe I'm going to say December. December is coming up, as many of you know. Along with that are our December events, along with Illuminate MI. Some of you may have noticed the lights are going up in Town Center. Those will be turning on in the next week or so. And then we have 11 different events happening in the month of December, community-wide. So outstanding. A lot of that has to do with our partners and them jumping on board with promotion through Parks and Recreation of their events. But some of the city-focused and organized events include the gallery reception with MyVol, the tree lighting, the Holiday Makers Market, which takes place here in the Community Center gym, the community holiday party, which will be here at the community center. And then on that same night will be the Argosy Christmas ships down at Luther Burbank Park. So in addition, again, we're hanging those lights in Town Center. Look for those to come on. It is very helpful, Commission, if you see lights that were on one day and they go off the next day. We do have some challenging infrastructure issues here on Mercer Island. Let me know. We like to get our crew out there to fix that whenever possible. So don't hesitate to let us know if that situation arises. And then just really quickly on the Parks and Recreation Commission planning schedule, we do have another meeting next week on e-bikes, which is in conjunction with the Open Space Conservancy Trust. December 4th, we actually don't have any agenda items. That's the same date as the holiday tree lighting. So I'm going to be touching base with Chair Hay and looking toward canceling that December meeting. We would then return in January. I believe Raven reached out trying to get a feel for availability, and we'll come back in January to discuss Dean's Children's Park as well as the athletic field use and allocation policy. Wrapping up in February with Clark and Groveland Joint Infrastructure Plan, and then we'll see where we'll know a little bit more as we go into the spring months as it relates to e-bikes and some of those other project items we have coming forward. But with that, thank you, Chair.
Okay, do we have any questions or comments about the report? I do have a question about the concrete at Mercerdale. Is anything happening with the trees there, or are they remaining untouched?
We're striving to keep them untouched. I don't know the extent of the root intrusion, but I can get back to you and let you know what that looks like.
Yeah.
I do know the giant sequoia. I had touched base with Jason Kittner, our Chief of Operations, earlier today. He mentioned that there were no issues around that and that there was the possibility of putting in sort of a planter bed to help protect that root system. The street trees traditionally have root intrusion issues, so we'll know a little bit more after they're done doing their excavation and that work that they've started this week.
Great, thanks. So the next item on the agenda is to review and consider approving the minutes from the October 20th, 2025 special hybrid meeting. Commissioners, may I have a motion to approve the minutes? So moved. There's a motion.
Second.
By a second. Great. Okay, you beat me to it. All right. Commissioners, does anyone have any questions or comments before we vote? Seeing none, commissioners, please turn on your microphones. Will the city staff please conduct a roll call vote?
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Markson,
Aye.
Commissioner Struck,
Aye.
Commissioner McCarthy,
Aye.
Commissioner Cohen,
Aye.
Vice Chair Westberg,
Aye.
Chair Hay.
Aye.
Thank you, Chair.
Motion passes and the minutes are approved. The next item on the agenda is the Dean's Children's Park Site Plan Update. For that, we welcome Capital Projects Manager Shelby Peralt.
Good evening. Okay, let me just get set up really quickly. Okay. Tonight, I'm excited to share an update on the site plan for Dean's Children's Park. Joining me virtually this evening are two members from our project team. First is Laura Laney, project manager with Berger Partnership, and second is Ingrid Canix, our inclusive design consultant on the project with Canix Inclusive Design Services. Both Laura and Ingrid are here to help answer any questions as we move through the presentation. Okay. So tonight, we'll start with a quick project background and a recap of what we heard from the community during the design concept phase. From there, we'll touch on the inclusive design principles that have shaped our approach, walk through the preferred plan and play components, highlight proposed parking lot improvements, and review the preliminary phasing plan. We'll wrap up with discussion and look ahead at next steps. We do have quite a lot of information to go through tonight, so if possible, I'd like to try and hold questions until a few planned pauses during the presentation. I'll stop at a couple of points to open up for discussion, and in the meantime, we do have a notepad and pen at your at the dais just to help you jot down any thoughts or questions as we go along. So before we dive into the presentation, I want to briefly highlight the purpose of tonight's touch point. We're here to share an update on the preferred plan and walk through 4 key questions to confirm that the design is headed in the right direction. I'll return to this slide at the end to help guide our discussion and capture your feedback. So kicking things off with project background, as you know, Dean's has been a beloved park with the community for over 60 years. And this slide just serves as a quick refresher. So the image on the right highlights the outline of Island Crest in that light blue color, with Island Crest running along the eastern edge. The site plan limits are noted in red, and the bike skills area is outlined in that yellow dashed line. Building on our September discussion, the need for a site plan comes down to 2 main drivers. First is the aging playground equipment, and second are the broader opportunities that were identified during our site assessment. So Dean's was prioritized for replacement in the 2022 PROS plan, but what really sets it apart is that its flat terrain makes it ideal for a more inclusive and accessible play experience. Our on-site assessment showed that improvements needed to extend beyond just the play area. So several amenities like the restroom or the little hobbit house that you see in the image here are outdated, don't meet accessibility standards. And so we really saw an opportunity to better connect the adjacent bike skills area and these central amenities, and found that these findings really supported the need to have a more comprehensive approach with a site plan rather than just a simple playground replacement. So after we established that a site plan was the right path forward, we went through that initial community input gathering phase, and that feedback helped us understand what people valued most about the park, what they envisioned for its future. And from there, we started translating those ideas into design concepts. So our second phase of community engagement took place over the summer. We had an online survey and went to 4 community events. Altogether, we heard from over 70 survey participants. We heard strong support for the Woodsy Wonders concept, and there was also strong interest in play elements that encourage creativity, exploration, and movement, especially those climbing and sliding features within the larger play structures and balancing in tunnels. We also got input on the look, feel, and character of play equipment to help inform the equipment that we would choose for the preferred plan. The style of the play elements that you'll see later on in the presentation was really inspired by this feedback and the images that you see on the screen. And then here's the Woodsy Wonders concept as a refresher. The preferred design direction based on community feedback, as well as what we heard from the commission back in September. So once our outreach wrapped up and we had clear direction on what concept we were going to refine, we actually brought the site plan to the Arts Council to get their input on public art opportunities. So we talked about ways to incorporate our 1% for art funding into phase 1, as well as future phases. We explored ideas like sculptures, graphic media, and functional art pieces, all inspired by the natural materials that the Treehouse Adventure theme would represent. There was a lot of excitement about involving students to help shape the theme and final designs. And all of these recommendations will be captured in our site plan report to help guide the implementation of public art. And we'll return back to them when design work for first phase begins. So before we start walking through the preferred plan, I do just want to take a moment to talk a little bit about more inclusive design principles. So you'll see you have a few pieces of paper in front of you. And you'll see that on the screen here. And these icons I'll talk about in a minute, but they're helpful to reference as we go through the PowerPoint. So we want to create a playground that goes just beyond minimum accessibility. We want a space where children of all abilities can play, explore, and connect. Our site plan integrates universal design principles and evidence-based practices to foster an inclusive and engaging environment. Achieving true inclusivity means taking a carefully balanced approach to play design as well as reviewing play elements, and we continually return to these ideas. So thinking about accessibility and adaptive equipment, play that works for children with different mobility needs. Accessibility is really the minimum requirement for playgrounds. But as adaptive access starts to get layered in, we take a step forward to a more inclusive play environment. And then to truly encompass an inclusive play environment, we need to layer in features and benefits to promote social, emotional, cognitive, sensory, and physical development. Thinking about social interaction, opportunities to make friends, cooperate, and play together. Those rich multisensory play experiences. So thinking also about tactile, auditory, visual, interactive, and those immersive experiences. Cognitive, thinking about developing critical thinking, planning, imagination, and an understanding of cause and effect. And then physical challenges. So thinking of activities that engage your gross and fine motor planning skills from movement, coordination, and that more rhythmic motion. So we've created a set of icons representing these different challenges, experiences that you can see on this slide and in the packet. And as we walk through the different play elements, you'll notice that these icons are shown on each of the pieces of equipment that we're talking about. So this really helps to give you a clear picture of how every piece of equipment really contributes to an inclusive play environment. And these areas really highlight the multifaceted value of play equipment and set the stage for the 7 inclusive design principles that guide our decision-making. And those are on the second and third page of your handout. So first is accessibility, making sure everyone can reach and use the play equipment, regardless of ability or mobility. Second is equitable play. So providing opportunities to participate at varying levels while supporting the development of physical, cognitive, and social skills. Third is flexibility. So having multiple ways to engage. And fourth is readability. So spaces and equipment that's easy to understand and navigate. So really thinking about clear wayfinding and communication. And then fifth is sensory engagement. So activities that create rich multisensory experiences. And then sixth is degrees of social interaction. So creating spaces for solo, small group, and large group play, supporting a multitude of social needs and comfort levels. And then last but definitely not least is multi-generational considerations. So spaces that accommodate multiple age groups, encouraging intergenerational play as well as family participation. So it's a lot of things that we've already talked about, but these principles really guide our design. We use them and refer back to them as we develop and refine the playground to ensure that it's truly inclusive, engaging, and supportive of all users' abilities and experiences.
Shelby, can we
Yeah.
ask a question?
Yes, of course.
Commissioner Strack.
Thank you. These 7 principles that you just have been discussing, are they, what is the right word? Authorized or accepted by some national group, or is it just, this is the current designer's views? I'm just curious as the background for these.
Yeah, and Ingrid can feel free to jump in if she has something to add, but this is, I would say, it's becoming a national common practice in design of inclusive play environments.
Okay,
So not just this project specific.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, so a lot of these are rooted actually out of an international document that was created up in Canada through the Jumpstart Initiative that actually looked at really the best practices from around the world and pulling those together into a free domain document of best practices moving forward. So that came out about 2 years ago, and more groups are starting to use that. So this is kind of a coalition of best practices from around the world speaking to these. And if you're interested in that resource, I can make it available. It is a free download through the Jumpstart website.
Thank you. I mean, the explanation was fine. Thank you.
Good. Okay. Okay, so with those guiding principles in mind, we looked closely at the existing playground to see what works, what's missing, and where there's room to grow. So this slide gives a snapshot of what's out there today, showing how play opportunities are currently distributed across different age ranges and play types. So for age ranges, we typically break playgrounds into 2 to 5, 5 to 12, and 12 plus categories. On the slide, green shows the 5 to 12 focus, pink is 2 to 5, and blue is blended, so 2 to 12 plus. For play types, we've clarified the language, and this was a great question, Peter. Instead of structured, thinking of formal play. So this would include play structures and individual play components, while informal play is really thinking about those open-ended spaces like trails, wooded areas, and smaller play nodes. So currently, the park has just over 10% formal play, with the rest being informal. And then looking at the distributions, we have about half of our equipment in that 5 to 12 focus. So looking ahead, our goal is to increase that blend or multi-age play opportunities and create a more balanced approach across all of the age groups. So while this is still in development, oops, sorry, too many screens.
Shelby,
Yes,
do those percentages include the bike skills area, or are we talking about that red outlined area?
just the red outlined area.
Thanks.
Thank you for asking. So for this proposed distribution, this is still in development, but I think that this slide really gives us a sense of what our target mix is. So for the 2 to 5 focus, 30%, 5 to 12 plus at 10%, and that blended group at 60%, which you can see here is really achieved through what we're calling our central play hub. The proposed design increases formal play by just under 3%. Keeping plenty of informal space while improving the balance for multi-age play areas. So I went through a lot of information, and this is one of the times I just wanted to pause and see if we have any questions before we start to move into the preferred plan itself.
I'm sorry, what are the snowflakes things or whatever?
Great question. Those are what we're calling like our forest surprises or play nodes. So smaller installations of play equipment along the trail. And I will speak to that in our different play zones that we are proposing.
So are those considered part of the formal percentage?
I can weigh in on that. If that's helpful. Those were considered as part of the informal, as they are the smaller play notes meant to be a discovery occurring as it is found within that trail environment.
Okay, and then the fact that the one play that's to the left of the picture, it's not, it doesn't have any color on it, yeah. Does
Yes,
that
that's
mean
a
it's-
wayfinding moment. So it's one of the entries into the park where we would have like signage or just like a grounding space.
I see, okay, thank you.
This isn't a question, but more of a comment that I'm really pleased to see more focus given to the 2 to 5-year-old group. I've always thought of this park in terms of being the preschool park. I don't know why. Maybe because of the dragon, because that was a big focus, I know, for our kids when they were in that age group. And just touching it, just approaching it, just seeing it was a big part of their experience and the attraction of going to that park. So it's great to see that there's more attention being given both to the preschool group, but also to the blended focus that can cover a wider range of children's interests.
So I'm looking kind of at the percentages and the shift, and I understand that. The question I have is, given that we're shifting more to the younger kids, and with the bike skills area literally right next door, is there some additional safety concerns that we're gonna have to be addressing, or because there's so many more, really small kids with the bikes and so forth? I just posed a question. I don't have an answer, but just curious.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I definitely think that that's something that we will need to take into consideration as we're looking through the equipment selection and how we place that equipment in proximity to the bike skills area. So I think that's a great just element for us to keep in mind as we're going through the design process.
And we might be getting into this in the future slides, but remind me if that outlined area is a fenced-in area. It is separated from the bike skills area, correct?
Yes, there is
By
a
fencing?
fence separating the bike skills area and the
Great.
playground.
Great. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the preferred plan. The preferred design builds on the Woodsy Wonders framework. So it celebrates the park's natural character through the use of more organic materials and play elements that are inspired by tree houses and woodlands. It also weaves in some of the features from the quest that we talked about. So thinking of the location of the restroom and picnic shelter orientation, providing better sight lines for parents. We also added a touch of whimsy with subtle dragon-themed discoveries tucked along the trail for visitors to enjoy. And then zooming into how accessibility is achieved throughout the playground. So we're highlighting two different types of pathways, accessible routes that meet ADA standards and adaptive routes. So the orange dash line shows the accessible routes which connect all play zones, ensuring that children and caregivers using mobility devices can reach each play area. And then the blue dash line shows adaptive routes. So these may have slightly steeper slopes, but they still meet applicable playground and trail accessibility standards. And these offer additional movement options through the park. But as you can see, we have accessible routes to all of the major play areas. And then the forest path is one of the signature accessible routes of the Woodsy Wonders concept. It winds through the heart of the park and connects play zones and leads up to the larger treehouse structure. It begins as a concrete walkway, possibly stamped to look like wood planks, then transitions to unitary play surfacing between the play structures and could become a boardwalk that links to that treehouse structure. As we move forward with our equipment selection, these details will continue to be refined, but we just wanted to show you a sense of the woodland experience that we're aiming for.
Can you tell me what unitary play surfacing is?
That is a great segue to my next slide. So with circulation, we're also looking at surfacing because that plays a key role in accessibility and the overall feel of the park. So we wanted to talk about our approach to playground surfacing and how we're balancing accessibility, site preservation, as well as cost. So on the left of your screen, you'll see examples of materials that we're considering for circulation and play surfacing, from more accessible unitary play surfacing, so like that poured in place rubber that you see out at Roanoke Park that was just installed, to engineered wood fiber, which offers a more natural look but is less accessible. On the right of the graphic, you see how these materials could be distributed across the site for the different play elements. So in the blue filled line, this would be representing unitary play surfacing. And the yellow areas would be showing that engineered wood fiber. So the poured in place it's a safety surfacing for play equipment, and it's the most accessible of all of the options for play surfacing.
Shelby, when you say engineered wood fiber, are we talking about wood chips?
Yes.
It's wood chips.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
These are great questions. Along with, oh wait, no, okay. Yes, now we're on the next slide. So before we jump into the play zones, the last piece of the overall plan that I'll talk about is the restroom and picnic shelter. So both of these would be located along the forest path just south of the bike skills area. The plan would include a 2-stall gender-neutral restroom with an adult changing bench. And then the picnic shelter would actually take cues from the design that's at Aubrey Davis Park, trying to maintain a cohesive look for our facilities across all our parks. And it's also positioned to keep clear sight lines to the critter corner, supporting visibility and connection between the different activity areas. So with all of these foundational elements in place, we can now shift our focus to the play components themselves. Now, we've divided the playground into distinct zones, and for each, we're sharing a selection of potential equipment options. So also noting materials, lifespan, and maintenance considerations. It's important to note that we're showing more components than will ultimately fit within each zone. The goal at this stage is to explore a variety of ideas, highlight how they could support inclusive design principles, and try and identify which elements or designs are most compelling to move forward and refine.
Shelby, quick question.
Yes.
I'm sorry, before you dive into the detail of
Yeah.
play components, I want to go back to your surfacing presentation and just, how about the trails through the park? Does the concept include potentially changing the existing natural surfacing to define those better and to make them work better for accessibility purposes?
Yes, so when we're looking at those accessible trails, we would be leaning towards the crushed rock with binder or some of the more impervious surfaces. But part of our discussion is also trying to understand, we're trying to find a balance between surfacing selection. So thinking about stormwater requirements and impact to trees and just maintaining the overall character of the park. So part of the discussion is getting your input and figuring out how we distribute that with the different trail types.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I have some questions as well about, and making some notes here of things that I want to come back to. Do you want to get through the presentation and then come back to certain topics, or do you prefer to dive in when we're at that part?
I think that it will start to make it'll be a little bit clearer as we go through each of the zones. So I think if we can talk about that when we get to the end of the zones, if that's okay.
Great. Yeah.
Okay.
So maybe make notes of anything that we want to come back to unless it's a clarifying question throughout the presentation.
I,
Yeah,
I
John.
had a clarifying question to follow up on Rory's comment.
Mhm.
You know, the materials, this is more how the citizenry of Mercer Island view some of these things. So, for example, the vestibular and proprioception are defined in here, but engineered wood fiber is not, until we found out that's wood chips. And unitary surfacing isn't defined, you defined them for us, but I think we want to avoid creating the perception that people have to drag the information out rather than, because I don't think you're trying to hide it, but some people are going to have views on wood chips from an accessibility point of view, on quote, rubber or whatever this material is. So that's a general comment. It's not about a specific, area of the plan. So. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And while we're on this slide, I think just one other thing to note is that, the goal is really to strike a balance, right? So maintaining access for mobility devices, preserving the woodland character, and meeting environmental and budget considerations. So trying to create a surfacing strategy that supports inclusive play, but also protecting the integrity of the park. Okay, let me get to the next slide. Okay. So as we move forward, we'll refine and narrow down options after we present to you tonight so that we can create a balanced mix of amenities. Because some examples are coming from different vendors, we'll also be looking closely at maintaining a consistent design aesthetic. So ensuring that all pieces are feeling cohesive within the overall park character. And before we jump into the play components, I did just want to offer Ingrid a moment to share a few words on play before we jump into things. So Ingrid?
Yes. Yeah, so really, when we think of children of all abilities, the drive to play is there regardless of how complex their medical conditions are. We want to make sure that we have an appropriate developmental sequence of play, starting with those younger children and allowing them to really grow into the park and grow into the play elements. So beginning again with much more pretend play and things that really support younger children in play as they're developing their motor skills and beginning to build their socialization skills. And then as they get more competent in those things, you'll see the different play components kind of grow and give them that chance to expand. And again, that increasing that multi-age range of play also allows children of different ages to support different children who they might meet at the playground and help scaffold a new friend into a play experience. So there's a lot of intentionality with all the different play components to make sure that we meet those needs.
Thank you, Ingrid. So we're going to start off with our entry play zone, or what we're calling the Critter Corner. This is for ages 2 to 5 and is themed around forest critters. So trying to provide a fun and welcoming introduction to the park. It includes adaptive climbers that encourage play, exploration, as well as quiet moments, all within clear sight lines for caregivers. And as we move through the other zones, you'll see how each area continues to build on these experiences. We'll be showing a selection of play components from a few different vendors. So each one brings unique materials and designs. So I'll be sure to touch on that as we go through too. So the first is with Earthscape. This equipment is made from durable wood, metal, rubber, and rope, designed to last around 25 years. And this is consistent for all of their products that we'll be showing tonight. Examples for this zone from Earthscapes, is a mix of forest creatures like our squirrel, log climbers, and a playhouse climber combo. Next is Compan. This equipment is made from wood, HDPE, which is a durable, weather-resistant plastic, rubber, and rope, and has an expected lifespan of about 30 years. And this is also consistent for all of their products. Here you see a fun mix of animal climbers, activity panels, and a little mushroom house. And then the ID Sculptures equipment is made from sculpted concrete. And this has an expected lifespan of about 50 years. Examples from this vendor have a variety of log climbing and balancing elements, as well as a little playful critter. Next is the Discovery Path, and this features play elements for ages 2 to 5. Yeah.
Hi, Shelby. Going back to those three different designs, are we looking to make a decision between those three types of designs?
Yeah, so when we get to the end, I think it'll be helpful. You'll get to see the whole spectrum of different types of play equipment and tell us if there are specific vendors that you're really drawn to, or if there are any that you don't think fit within the character of the park from like all of the engagement that we've had to date. And our goal is to take those key elements and start to refine them further and build around them. So if you were to say, oh, we love this one vendor, but not the others, then we can take that out of the running.
Okay, and then going back to the third design, is that what we have down at the South Mercer playfields? It looks really similar to, yeah, that looks really similar to what we currently have at South Mercer. Is that accurate? Are they the same or at least very similar?
That's a great question. I would ask Ryan if he knows that answer, being a little new here.
You waited for me to put a
Yeah.
snack in my mouth. It is very similar. I don't think it's the same exact equipment, but it's very, very similar in appearance.
Yeah, it looks really similar. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, of course. Any other questions before we move to the next zone? Okay. So the Discovery Path offers a mix of both active and passive experiences. So these are supposed to be smaller scale interventions that are strategically placed within gaps within the tree canopy. So trying to minimize tree impact, preserve the forest character, but also provide some fun exploration opportunities. So Earthscape, this collection has a variety of little play huts, hammocks, tables, and what we're calling the wobble boards. And then next is Compan. This first slide showcases some fun music elements, a tunnel, and an abacus. And then the second slide for Compan is has options for balancing, climbing, and imaginative play with components like a little bridge and mushroom playhouse. And then the last slide for the Discovery Path is from Landscape Structures. And this is a new vendor. So this equipment is made from that HDPE or rubber, rope and metal. And this has a lifespan of around 30 years. And this is also consistent for all of their products. This slide is really showing a variety of opportunities for that multi-sensory experience. So looking at the activity panels, music, steppers, and spinners. And you'll recognize this log tunnel, which was going to be at First Hill Park. And then some of the smaller elements in the previous slides could be easily integrated into this, what we're calling the forest surprise zone. And these are the, I think going back to the play distribution, these are those play nodes that we had highlighted before for the different distributions. So these would fit naturally along the trails and add fun little unexpected moments while keeping the space minimally impacted. And then next, the intermediate structures. So these would actually form the central play hub and would connect to the Discovery Path and nearby amenities. So two structures would likely fit within this zone and would provide imaginative, that sensory-rich play with both smaller scale challenges and mid-challenges for children of multiple age groups. So first, these Berliner structures are constructed of rope, metal, wood, and that rubber with about a 50-year lifespan. These structures offer somewhat mini modern treehouse feel with, multiple connected elements that offer balancing, climbing, sliding, and exploring. And some include transfer points from mobility devices, which you can see here in this rubber ramp. And then here we see a set of compan structures with that more natural log-inspired aesthetic, as well as a roped play system. Here we see equipment with both ramped structures as well as transfer points, giving a variety of ways for children of different abilities to engage. And then the second slide shows additional compan structures, and these would really embrace the treehouse and that woodland fantasy theme. So elements like the bear climbing the tree and a fallen log, really trying to build on that interactive, imaginative play. And then next, we're looking at some of those extra play components. So swings, spinners, rockers, all with adaptive options. So kids can play solo or side by side, adding variety for this area. So first up is Earthscapes. This is a very natural wood-inspired look that blends with the woodland character. Second is Compan, similar natural feel, but this one has the HDPE material and a slightly longer lifespan. And then finally, landscape structures. This is probably the most modern style, and it's made mostly of metal and HDPE. And then other fun elements include a no transfer spinner and a group seesaw, both with the same landscape structures. And then the last zone that we'll look at is the large treehouse inspired adventure for ages 5 to 12 plus. So this offers multiple levels of play to suit different comfort levels, and it acts as a visual landmark for people coming to the park. So we'll be showing 2 very preliminary concepts and looking for input on one of the 2 to continue to refine. So starting with Berliner, this concept leans into what we're calling the forest adventure treehouse, and it all culminates in this tall climbing tower. So the tower's spiral mesh net acts almost like a ramp, allowing those who use mobility devices to climb all the way to the top and enjoy the tallest slide. A net tunnel bridge connects to a smaller treehouse pod, creating an immersive play journey through the canopy. And these pods could actually connect to some of the other Berliner equipment that you saw in the intermediate structures. And because the tunnel is fully enclosed, it doesn't actually require safety surfacing below, which allows for greater flexibility when we're thinking about how it fits within the trees and around the trees. And you'll also see a rubber access ramp providing transfer points and climbing support. So, while this design has less natural wood materials, it does have a longer lifespan at nearly 50 years. And then the second 5 to 12 that
Shelby,
we'll show you.
Can you go back to that slide briefly? And then, so I've never seen anything like this. And can
It's
you
really
explain
cool,
again?
isn't it?
Yeah. How tall approximately is that structure? Not that
So
that's the
this
one
would
we
be
picked,
roughly
but-
30 feet tall.
Okay. And remind me, the surface is net all the way up?
Yeah, so it's a really tightly woven net that almost acts as a ramp for you to be able to climb up and get all the way to the top and slide down.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Thanks.
And this is, I would say, much more early stages than the next concept. So just something to note is that these smaller pods, what we're calling, they could actually connect to other tunnels. So you could have a series of tunnels that would connect, or it could also connect to one of the intermediate play structures with slides or other climbing elements. So this is really just like the starting point of where this could be built
Okay.
on.
Yeah. I was going to ask if kids don't want to go all the way up. Can you put a smaller slide at some stage along the way?
You could
Okay.
have like a slide off of one of these pods, or there is an opportunity if you cross the tunnel to go back down.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Yeah. And then for Compan, this one takes on more of a rustic treehouse experience. So creating more of a cozy, nature immersed feeling. It has a platform-based treehouse, so it provides direct access for mobility devices. But this approach does reduce some of the opportunities for more active play in between the connection zones. So this also has a tall climbing tower with a slide. It offers an open net play experience, though access to the very top is a bit more limited compared to the previous concept. At ground level, it has a variety of play opportunities, so from active climbing and movement to more passive engagement spaces. And this overall aesthetic leans, I would say, a little bit more natural and wood forward, emphasizing materials and textures that blend a little bit more, but this one does not get quite as high. This is in like a 21 feet total, so almost a 10-foot difference in height between the two options. And that was the last of the play zones. So I know there's a lot of different things that we went through, but just want to take a moment to answer questions or, yes.
I was just wondering, because we did a whole thing when we did the parks, and what was our height in the parks that we said? Do you remember, Ryan?
Oh, the zoning?
Yeah, like for buildings, what was the max? And so this would come under that, right? I just want to make sure that we were within that.
We would make sure that we are compliant with city code with
Yeah.
anything that we do. But I'm gonna look across at Kelly as she's diving right in, I think.
What was that? Sorry.
Sorry, the question was on height within the park zone.
Yeah.
And if play equipment falls into that,
Oh, that is a very good question. Why don't I look into that right now as Shelby's presenting and I will report back out.
I know that playgrounds were not specifically called out in the park zone as other facilities were, such as restrooms. So
Yeah, that's why I was just curious and thought we
had
should
height limits
clarify
on
it.
Buildings, but I don't recall that we applied any to playgrounds.
that's my recollection as well.
Okay, other questions or comments about these play zones?
Chair, I have a few questions.
Yes.
First off, about the paths. As I recall, there were two categories of accessibility. I forgot what they were called. One more accessible than the other one. The ones that are less accessible, are they that way because it's impossible to do given the terrain to make them meet the other standards?
It's a great question. And, it's not that it's impossible. I think it's trying to find a balance of earthwork that would need to be done to meet accessibility and trying to minimize the amount of impact to the tree canopy. So trying to minimize the amount of grading that would have to be done in order to meet accessibility requirements. And trying to have a balance between the two and not trying to have too much hard surfacing throughout the park and, potentially change the character of the park.
Okay. And the playground equipment, which by the way looks like stuff I would have loved to have played on when I was a kid, and I know my kids would have loved it too. It's exciting stuff.
Same.
A lot of it looks like it's not very accessible itself. Is that true? Do you have a sense of what percentage of it is stuff that a kid in a wheelchair could use? So, for example, that Berliner, you said a person with a, forgot the term you used, a mobility assisted device could climb up it. A kid in a wheelchair can't go up that, can he?
Yes, and I'll let Ingrid speak to that, but that's where we start to use the language of transfer points. So transfer from a mobility device to still be able to engage with the play equipment and participate, but it's not staying in the actual wheelchair or mobility aid.
Okay, so is the theory that some kids, even if they're in a wheelchair, might be able to crawl up it? Is that the idea? Just like the other kids?
Yes.
Yeah, so for children who are able to either self-transfer or transfer with the help of a parent, they're still able to crawl up some of that belting or that netting that you see to get to certain points. I think, one thing to remember is, these are still concepts, and one of the things we would like to do is really challenge whoever that final choices to like, how do I, if we're gonna have, let's say, this boardwalk that takes me up to a certain level, especially in that kind of 5 to 12 structure, can I stay in my wheels and get to a decent heights? And then when I get there, what's the quality of the play experience? So we want to make sure that if I'm going to make that effort to, wheel up to this certain point, because we're designing the trail and the boardwalk to get me to a certain height, that once I get there, I've got something to do with my friends, as opposed to, people leaving me on the slide and I can't necessarily go down the slide. So I think there's still a lot of work to do with the different vendors from that standpoint of saying, okay, you know, if we look at kids with disabilities, first of all, wheelchair users are only about 1% of children with disabilities that we see within the school system. So about 14% of kids at schools are getting some type of services for special needs. Wheelchair users are 1% of that. And then actually the kids who can transfer are only about 3% of that 1%. So a lot of wheelchair users have difficulty transferring, and some actually it's important that they stay in their wheels because that's where they get their stability. So some of the ground elements, like the wheelchair spinner and some of the other elements, we definitely want to make sure that are things that can be used for somebody who doesn't or shouldn't leave their wheels. But we also, there's still a lot of design work that needs to be done that, if I am creating access into some of these towers using the different boardwalks, that I'm also taking that individual to a play experience that's a quality play experience. So there's still a good amount of work that needs to be done on that end. Once we get a sense of what the feel is of, kind of which manufacturer or vendor that you feel is comfortable. The trails, going back to your previous question, for some children, they actually like a little bit more challenge when they're wheeling, and maybe I have to work a little harder, but the material of that trail is still something I can roll on. So I get some of that kind of fun of, being on a rougher surface. I think a lot of times we think, and I'm a part-time wheelchair user. I actually kind of like a little bit more challenge when I'm wheeling. And so it's that piece of giving the child the choice of, I can take this easier path, which we know is, level and smooth, or I can take this path that has a little bit more undulation and some bumpies in it, and I can make that choice of which route I want to take. It also gives a lot of our other kids who, maybe are ambulatory, but they need that challenge of different textures to walk on and different challenge, as well as, our kids who are typical who are coming to play here. So if, 14%, are receiving, services under IDEA Act, that means 86% of the kids who are coming are typically developing. And we want, if we really want true inclusion, then we want to make sure that those children also have a degree of challenge and interest. It's how do we find that balance? Again, a lot of this is about finding that balance and what's, the quality of the play experience for different visitors. So, I do a lot of research with graduate and doctoral students around kind of post-occupancy with playgrounds. And the number one thing we hear from parents is, I want the playground to provide my child to develop friendships. And that doesn't necessarily mean they need to get to the top of every structure or play on every element. It's how do we create opportunities for children to be together and enjoy discovering each other and discovering, this beautiful property that has a gorgeous canopy and all kinds of fun along the way. So, we're doing a lot of thinking also around the neurodiverse population, and the kind of those discovery trails are a big part of that as well. So I don't know if that gets to kind of your question, but we need to be really intentional with, when we get up to heights, what's happening for that child who's staying in their care.
Exceptionally helpful. Thank you. Excellent answer. Last question, then I'll shut up. The risk manager in me was terrified by this Berliner structure, because it looks like, well, it's very nice in there, in the netting inside, wants to go out onto the slide, it looks like it's just a conventional slide 30 feet up in the air, so a kid could just fall off the edge. Is that what it really is?
It is totally enclosed.
Oh, it is enclosed.
Up the
Oh,
top,
okay.
yes.
Oh, okay, that makes me feel much better.
The render might be giving you a little weird view, but yes, it is totally enclosed. And even some of their spatial nets that they create, the interior of the spatial nets, there's no more than 72 inches of fall height before something would catch a child. So no worries there. I know that's a little
Okay.
confusing to see.
Yes, good. I feel much better. Thank you.
So I have a similar question slash comment about the paths and the equipment. So first, a comment that I love, the paths, how you've made every part of this accessible. It's really exciting to see that. I mean, amazing. We have nothing like that right now. So love to see that. Thank you. You definitely heard that feedback. When it comes to the equipment, I know we're not at the point to select specific pieces right now, but on the vendors' examples, we saw some equipment that would be accessible, some that might not be. For instance, the Forest Friends, there might be a little ledge so that somebody couldn't get, into that structure. I guess I would just comment that whoever we choose, that we make sure that we're ensuring that not only can people get to the structure, but with a little modification by not having a barrier, then they can actually play with what they're getting to. So it might be hard to choose a vendor without seeing those specific pieces. And then a comment on that equipment. When we do make the decision, it would be great to see how many of these actually are accessible, what level of inclusive play are we achieving here, and have we selected the right vendor to make that happen?
Yeah, and I'll let Laura jump in if she would like to at some point, but I think one thing that's really important to know is that, everything is customizable. So we do have a lot of options for making the equipment work to the needs that we're trying to meet. So if we have an aesthetic that we're really drawn to, we can go back to them and, kind of like what Ingrid was saying, is really push them to meet those goals that we're trying to set so that we can make sure that we're achieving what we're setting out to do.
I'll
Great.
also add, as we get into that more finalized, refined layout, that'll really give us a clearer picture of all those inclusivity goals. So we'll be able to break that down a little bit further for you and show that balance a little more clearly. But since we're such a little conceptual and higher level at this point in time, there is a lot of options. Like Shelby said, there's a lot of options for customization and just choices too. These vendors are doing some really great things for accessibility, and inclusivity, and that's where Ingrid comes in to help us refine the choices. But yeah.
Great, thank you. And one last
Mhm.
comment on design. I would love to see something that is unique and different from what we have at the other playgrounds. For instance, the Berliner structure and also the rope structure is something like we don't currently have. And I think some of the landscape structure pieces that we saw look similar to what we have at the new Roanoke Park and possibly Mercerdale, and then not duplicating what we have at South Mercer. So, I know most kids refer to everything as the Dragon Park or the Rainbow Park or something unique about it. So I'd love to see something unique here as well that sets it apart from all the others. Other questions, comments?
Would you mind going back to the surfacing slide?
Absolutely.
So I'm just curious on the permeability of the various surfaces. Are they all permeable?
So the engineered wood fiber wood chips, that's the most pervious of the surfaces. The other ones would not be considered pervious surfaces. Those would be impervious.
Okay. Yeah, I'm thinking, we've had a lot of discussions in this group about impervious surfaces, and I didn't see anything in this documentation about that topic. And what sort of change would be, if there would be an increase, decrease, or basically the same as what's there.
Yeah, and when we come back to you, we'll be showing a percentage to show the increase, because I know that as part of our new parks code, we need to, we can't increase our impervious surfaces unless it's part of an adopted plan. So part of this effort is making sure that we're getting the input from the community and getting your feedback to make sure that we are being cognizant of minimizing that increase in impervious surface.
Okay, and then thank you for that information. The structures are really amazing. I really like personally, like the wood ones, which I notice they seem to take a little more maintenance and have a lower lifespan. But I was thinking, well, 50 years, that's a long time. Like that would have been 1975 that it was built. Anyway, so maybe, looking at the public, what's that? Is that when it was built? I don't think so. Is that park 50 years old, the playground structures?
Not the structures, but the park was in the 60s when it was built.
Yeah, the playground structures are definitely newer. Yeah. I was just thinking that, I'm looking at the public comments to preserve the natural character of the park, and I definitely see how the design has tried to do that. But I guess in my mind, I'm thinking about, we took a wooded area and put a bike park in it, and then we're taking a wooded area and we're trying to make a woodsy play structures in the woods. And maybe some of those areas don't need the play structures. They just need the trails that people can get away from other people on, without having like a official structure on it. Just something you might consider to keep that natural character that people were referring to.
I'd have to say that, again, referring back to the specific examples of the equipment and things like that, I was drawn to the ones that incorporated more wood and natural materials, but still created a fascinating and interesting play structure that could work on multiple levels. So a compound was one, and then the other one in the first group, the next one, the earthscapes and things like that. I mean, those strike me in my own mind's eye, those strike me as the type of thing that your criteria are suggesting we'd want to put in there rather than the colorful plastic and metal poles and things like that we have put to good effect in other playgrounds, but that this one is a little different and is a little bit special.
When you drive south on Island Crest Way, and you get to Island Park School, and you have the backdrop of the woods, and then you've got the play structures that are green, and I mean, they're bright green, and well, I don't know what the material is, but they're not natural. Every time I go by that, I kind of scratch my head a little bit. I'm sure they're fine and kids must love them, but I kind of agree with Rory that I'm not drawn to that for the inside of this area.
So a quick question on the designs and the vendor. It seems that we are probably going to have at least two different vendors, given that not one vendor can meet all of these 5 play areas. Is that correct?
I think that's a fair comment to make, that it'll likely be a combination of 2 vendors that we'll use for the play equipment. So if there's one piece that the group is really drawn to, and also taking into consideration the natural aesthetic, it's finding that other vendor that really complements to make sure that we have a cohesive look. So if you're more intrigued by like the Compan 5 to 12 structure or the Berliner, then looking at what other vendor would complement those for the rest of the play areas.
Mhm. Are you planning to have another community survey to narrow it down to a few options?
We did not have that in the project scope, but if that is something that is a priority for the commission, we can definitely look at exploring that further. And I will say, this is just the overall site plan for the park. So the next phase will have another opportunity to get input on the elements that we're including and the direction that we're heading.
Great. Thanks.
Do we have a way, and maybe you've already done this to some extent, do we have a way of pinpointing people with families with disabilities, however that's defined? Like, what's the name of the man who was sort of encouraged us at Mercer Dale to make that as an inclusive? Oh, okay, here it is. Okay, so I guess there is a way to engage with, to get information from people, at least on these issues, not on the general subject of would this be fun to play on and would it inspire imagination and everything. So thank you. I apologize. I didn't remember you.
Thank you. And my grandson will be very happy to read a test. And there's also Friendship Circle, which meets here regularly, Rabbi Golden-Musky, and there are many kids in wheelchairs with other disabilities and mobility issues, and as well as sensory issues. So I'd encourage you to reach out to them and possibly, get some get some of the future users to weigh in.
Yeah, Dawn, thank you for bringing that up. And thank you, John, for being here. John Hamer has devoted hundreds, thousands of hours to this, and I'm happy to welcome you to our meeting here tonight. I also want to mention, Dawn, and to others that there is a community group. It's a coalition called Friends of Dragon Park, which has been amazing at providing input up to this point. From the perspective of users of the playground, including MIPA Preschool Association members and Mr. Hamer and other interested and invested community volunteers, basically. So my understanding is that this will be probably, they'll hopefully review this and hopefully they'll get a look at it as well to give their input on it.
Yes. Yeah, we're actually planning to meet with the Friends of Dragon Park in early December to go over where we're at, feedback that we heard from the commission, and they've been an amazing resource for this whole project. So yeah, we're very lucky to have a group that's so committed to the support of this project.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
But one other question.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yes. Who wants to go first? Okay, Robert.
This is more out of curiosity than anything, but as you have talked about your design principles and looked at different options and explored how to make this design as accessible and inclusive as possible, has the subject come up about the need to make any kind of modifications to the dragon structure?
When we went out and, did our community engagement, some of the things that we did here was, the dragon is aging and could benefit from some improvements. I will say that is kind of a, no pun intended, like a beast of its own, and is really its own capital project. So, we have really limited funding for this scope, and what you'll see later on is we actually have a dedicated phase to making accessibility improvements around the dragon, as well as making improvements to the dragon itself.
Commissioner Cohen?
Does staff know yet whether it will be making a recommendation on some of these options at some point?
If I will be making a recommendation?
Well, if you and the rest of staff, whatever it is.
We would be happy to provide a recommendation. I would say that hearing your input now is helpful, and for us to go back and look, because it's not just us, it's also looking with our maintenance and operation team and our recreation team. So we're not at a point tonight where we could give a recommendation, but we would be happy to include that when we come back to you early next year.
Commissioner Struck?
Yes,
Sorry, Commissioner Cohen, did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, Peter.
Thank you. Really to follow up, I think on a point that Ashley made a few minutes ago. You know, again, I look at the percentage of kind of the focus in the age group. So we're on the 5 to 12, or call it the older group. You know, we're going from 50% now down to 10%, and we talked about that. And so I'm thinking about that 10% and kind of to your point about having kind of a signature structure, if you will, for a park, and that I'm not 100% wedded to it, but that Berliner kind of tower, you know, could serve that purpose. So that's kind of my thought at this point.
And if I actually can provide you an update, I did review the code with Ryan as well. That was the back and forth you all saw. The height limits are actually specific to buildings. So we are good there. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I do remember on our previous surveys, it must have been with Mercerdale, that the number one feature that kids were most excited about was the height. So this would be the playground to do it, because we have the fall space, we have the space to do something like that. And to Commissioner Markson's point about keeping it natural, and I think one way to do that is to maybe not over clutter it with equipment. So choosing some really thoughtful key pieces, and then the natural, earthscape or compound that tie into those natural elements, rather than clutter it with lots of equipment, just have a natural flow with some real exciting key pieces. Those are my thoughts. Yes, please.
I just want to add that like using the sculpted concrete is a really great way to add in those natural elements that are really hard to destroy. Especially in the little quiet moment areas where they're not getting so many eyeballs on them. I think that could be a really neat way to add in those quiet moments that are still safe but also don't take a lot of maintenance and can blend in nicely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think we were going on to the parking zone next,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Do we have any other comments about the play area? That was a lot to cover.
It was, and thank you all for your continued engagement and great feedback. There's a lot to get through tonight, but we're almost at the end.
Okay, right.
Okay,
Let's
so
look at the
parking lot.
Great.
Okay, there we go. Let's see. So before we look at potential improvements, I just want to show you what the existing condition is for the parking lot, just so you can understand the layout, limitations. So north is actually oriented upwards, and existing trees are filled in green, so showing the tree canopy. The current parking lot has 12 stalls, of which roughly half meet current standards for width requirements. All of our options are showing 4 ADA stalls and assuming a one-way traffic in comparison to the two-way traffic that's there now. The baseline improvements would minimally expand the footprint, and that's really just to improve overall layout efficiency and bring one more stall in. So the total stalls would be 11, and 7 of those would be non-ADA. Nearly all of them would be compact stalls, and this we do not anticipate having to remove any trees. The moderate approach increases the total parking stalls to 15, and this one would require the removal of 1 tree, and nearly all of the stalls would be compact. So this is trying to provide a balance between an increase in capacity, but less tree impact. And then this would exceed the total number of non-ADA stalls at the park now. And then finally, for the maximum approach, this would take the total parking stalls to 17, and 13 of those would be non-ADA. So this option provides nearly an equal mix of compact and regular stalls, but would require the removal of 2 trees. And, these 3 options are really trying to give you a range from minimum to maximum. So would love to get your feedback on approaches to capture in the site plan report.
Commissioner McCarthy.
Thank you. I just want to say that there's not that many compact cars on Mercer Island, especially with the parents.
Yeah.
Everybody's driving big things, so that might be a consideration with having like 7 compact stalls. They will really be 4 because they will take up, the vehicles are going to take up 2 of those compact spaces.
Yep. Thanks. Commissioner Strick.
Yeah, again, since we're kind of changing the character to younger children, which generally is going to mean they're going to many times, as opposed to the older kids that can, walk or ride their bike, they'll probably be with their parents and so forth. So that would kind of, in my mind, would necessitate more parking. Not that I'm a big fan of that, but I think that's kind of the way the park is designed. And I think we need to be aware of that, or to consider, the overflow of going over to I'll call it the baseball field parking kind of issue. And I guess that probably brings up a whole another set of issues.
Oh, Councilmember Reynolds, do you have your hand up?
Yes. First, I wanted to echo the comment about compact cars. I think there are a great many of them. And then I wanted to follow up on Commissioner Struck's comment about the baseball parking. I suspect in the weeks and months after this opens, you'll have 100+ cars that'll want to park here. How far away, remind us how far away that baseball field is and parking lot is, and how full is it commonly?
I can speak to that a
There's
little
a
bit.
lot of spaces.
Yeah, yes. Ryan Daly, Recreation Manager. Last meeting, we talked about our athletic fields and the volume we're seeing out there. That lot, even on a night, maybe not tonight, but I was there last night, and football was there, and the lot was full. And that was only on the use of one of the fields. The other field is actually closed down. So that lot does get heavily used. Can be a little bit more sporadic. The hours right after school tend to be a little bit more open. So there's a little bit of a difference there. Distance wise, one of the interesting things with the athletic fields, specifically at Island Crest Park, is even if there's nothing else happening at that park and it's just a baseball game or just a baseball practice, as you can imagine, those parents like their windshields. So they're all parking further away and further down to, where the trailhead is and where the tennis court is. So you're seeing more people parking down that way as opposed to closer to the restroom area. So just something to contemplate, that parking, as with any park site in our system, is definitely a challenge at this location.
And is street parking an option there on Island Crest Way, or does it have shoulders?
There is some limited street parking. I would say it's not the best situation probably for a parent unloading a child on that area.
That's what I thought. And then I just want to put in a plug. I hope these will be 4-season restrooms, so they're open all the time.
Oh,
Yes.
Yes,
That would be the case.
Commissioner McCarthy.
I was just going to add, if people are going to be parking over by the ball fields, and we need to have some sort of a sidewalk or something like that, because there currently is no
Right.
sidewalk access to get back over to the playground.
Yeah, and I
Yes,
would
yeah.
like to add that's, we heard that feedback throughout both phases of our community engagement. And if we're not going to add capacity for parking, we should be thinking about that sidewalk connection from the ball fields parking lot to the playground area.
Yeah, that was my comment as well, because currently there's not a safe
No.
way to get from the large parking lot into the playground. And whether that means a sidewalk to the south of the tennis courts or a path that ties in to the side of the bike skills area or something like that. I think regardless of how many parking spots we have to create that safe access because the lot will be full at times, especially with the new picnic shelter. There might be parties happening there. So, yeah. Commissioner Markson?
I was just gonna comment on what Commissioner Struck said, and I think that, if we're gonna add parking, this is probably the right place to do it and the right piece of land to put under a parking lot, because it's just a little strip of trees. And so as much as I don't want to add parking, I agree with you. Yeah.
Commissioner Struck?
Yeah, just one question. On the north side, I know at one point we had talked about there would be an entrance basically from the school. That then, I don't want to speak to the school district, but that would theoretically open up that school district or the Island Crest Park or Island Park school lot that as an overflow, during non-school hours.
There used to be an entrance there.
There is an entrance, yeah.
It exists.
Mhm.
So a quick question looking at this. We're going to be moving the restroom. So is that an area where we can expand parking in the current footprint of that restroom? Because I'm assuming that will disappear.
So this restroom would actually stay. And that's because it actually has a storage chase for a lot of our telecommunications that different companies have leased out. So we have to keep that structure in place.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Okay, thanks.
So what I'm hearing though is generally support for the maximum approach and also looking at the types of stalls that we are reviewing, understanding that compact is maybe not as feasible or not as ideal. Okay.
Yeah, maybe
Aspirational.
thumbs
yeah.
up on that. Thumbs up,
Say
thumbs
that
down.
my view is what you said, subject to community input on the parking spot issue. Again, I'm a little less enamored of taking out trees than I am to, even if it got you a few more spots, but
Mhm.
I'd be interested in what other, what the community, if you're going to engage with the community in general again on this, because they really haven't spoken, they haven't had an opportunity specifically to focus on parking, right?
When we did our first round of engagement, we asked the community to prioritize if we were to have picnic shelters, restrooms, and parking improvements, how would you rank those? And parking was the second. So first was restroom, second was parking, and third was a picnic shelter. So that was, so we didn't get a full scope on how far expanding the footprint, but generally what we heard was that the parking lot is small and it's usually full and hard to get parking. And so they have to park at the ball fields and then walk to the playground.
Thank you for that reminder.
Okay, we good to
Okay,
move to the
think we're
last part of
ready to
phasing?
Move forward, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to jump into phase one. Now, this first phase was developed within the current allocated budget. And this focuses on laying the groundwork for future improvements. So in this phase, we would install utilities for future connections to the restroom and the picnic shelter before we would construct our forest path, trying to minimize future ground disturbance. Other work within this phase would be installing that large 5 to 12 plus structure, adding swings, replacing the fencing along the south property line, and restriping the ADA stalls to meet current standards. And, the reasoning behind this sequencing was to start at the farthest area from the park and work forward so that we could try and reduce future impacts to the amenities once they're installed. Now, the second phase focuses on building out the central play area. So installing the picnic shelter, completing parking lot improvements. And the picnic shelter is included in this phase because grading for the central play area and the associated elements would really impact the shelter as it stands now. And so we placed it here so that we would have a no net loss of amenities in between phasing. So, ideally, we would see phase 1 and 2 done together, but, we recognize these are pretty big dollar amounts. And so some of this work may be contingent on grant funding or fundraising options. I do just want to make a quick note on the costs that you're seeing. So you'll see some pretty wide ranges, and that's because these are very preliminary estimates. These are high level, and we'll bring more refined options and costs when we come back to you early next year.
Shelby,
Yes,
are these costs individual per the phase or
Correct.
cumulative?
per phase.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm. In phase 3, I know playgrounds are expensive. Phase 3 really rounds out the rest of the park. So it looks at completing the entry area, the discovery path, the restroom, and wayfinding. And then the last phase, phase 4, has an allowance for improvements to Kenton's Dragon. We talked about this earlier, but during our community engagement, we heard that it's seeing some wear and tear and can use some improvements. So we just want to recognize that and include that as part of the overall site plan. And then, one more thing to highlight is these smaller play nodes that we talked about earlier, what we're calling those forest surprises. These could offer great opportunities to construct as additional funding allows. These could be added across multiple phases and provide some flexible ways to add amenities to the park while still maintaining the overall aesthetic. So that wraps up a very long presentation. I just recognize that was a lot of information. So really appreciate you staying engaged. And so, we brought these questions up at the beginning, but I just want to take a moment to answer any other questions that you have before we start going into the discussion.
I didn't do the math fast enough. What
Oh.
at the high end, if you did everything now and you had the money, what was it including the 100K?
It's 6.3 to 7.8 is the range.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
And could you scroll back briefly to phase 1, 2, and 3, just to take a look at that again? Okay, so phase 1 really just gets us the paths, the swings. Okay, I'm just.
Yeah, phase 1 is some
taking a
of
quick
the
look at this.
unfun things like that underground work, the utility trenching, and some of the work for future phases.
Mhm. Okay, and the idea would be to do at least phase 1 and 2 together.
We see those complementing each other, but, recognize that we don't have anything beyond what our budget is currently showing in the CIP. So trying to identify a phase that, we meet the levy requirement of having one structure replaced and trying to fit within our current budget. But if we were to be successful for grant funding or to, get enough fundraising, we really see those first 2 phases being done holistically.
Okay, thanks. Oh, Councilmember Reynolds, is that a new hand? Do you have a comment?
Sorry, I was on mute. Just a reminder for myself, maybe somebody else can correct me if I'm wrong. I think the parks levy was about $1 million a year is what we had. Is that correct? For playground equipment? Anybody remember?
I don't recall the yearly allocation, but I know that for this park, we have just under 500,000 allocated for a playground equipment replacement.
So does there exist somewhere a total worksheet that says out of all the parks levy funding, how much is allocated to each park?
Yeah, within our budgeting document, we have a dollar allocation for each park that we're completing improvements at.
Because it seems like there's some tough decisions ahead here. Either if we do something like this, we're either cutting out a lot of other parks or we've got to come up with a lot of money elsewhere somehow. And it seems like that should be a discussion that should be had, but maybe that's at the council level. I don't know.
Yeah, and I can just add that in the adopted CIP, it does identify the dollars from the 2022 Parks Levy and the allocation to the different parks. So that's where you'll find that information. And that approximately 500,000 is just one part of the budget. City Council also allocated an additional $1 million to go towards this project, so that's 1.5 overall. We went into this project knowing that this design was going to exceed that budget, which is why part of this work is to come up with a financing plan, including how we're going to go after certain grants, do fundraising, knowing that that's a big part of this project as well. So knowing where we're at today and the input we've received from all of you, which is fantastic, it helps us to tighten this up a little bit, look at those numbers, and come back with our strategies on some funding that the Parks Commission will consider and recommend to City Council for their approval, along with this site plan.
Okay. Well, I hope we can find a way to pull it off. It'd be awfully cool, but I'm nervous.
Me too. I'm very optimistic.
We do see this as a very strong candidate for RCO grant funding. So, part of the exercise in going through this site plan report and coming up with this 30% level design is to make us even more competitive for grant funding so that we can try and leverage and work into those later elements in the phase 2 to incorporate as part of this project. And having partners like Friends of Dragon Park and other agencies will be really helpful to show support for the project too.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other questions or comments about this? Okay, so I think we're back to the original questions, right?
There we go.
Okay.
Let me see. So starting with the first question, does the preferred plan reflect the types of play identified through community input? Do you see any gaps or adjustments that we need to refine as we take this back and continue to develop the play concepts?
Comments? Commissioner Westberg?
Well, just my gut reaction to all 4 of those questions is it looks like you're on the right track. It's just the devil is going to be in the details as we get down to picking and designing particular play structures and things like that to be able to really hone in on the answers. But I think you guys have done a really great job to move that forward with these principles in mind.
Commissioner Markson?
I concur.
I see heads nodding. Do we feel that way? Yeah, so I would agree with that. With the caveat, are there any gaps or adjustments needed? It really depends on where we get with the funding, and I know that's not something we discuss in this capacity. But if we were only to do phase 1, there's a lot of gaps and a lot of adjustments. There's no playground for the under 5s. There's no access to the path. So I would say the designs that we've seen, yes. And if we can get to phase 2 and 3, we've met all of that. But if we can only do phase 1, there's a lot of gaps. So that's not something we discussed tonight, though, is it?
We can definitely touch on it more when we meet early next year. I will say that that 5 to 12 structure would be replacing an existing 5 to 12 structure. So a lot of the other existing play structures would still stay in place if it's only that first phase that gets built. So some of those other amenities will still be at the park. But when we're talking about bringing in something new and fun and exciting, you're not you're correct, we could have the swings for those different age ranges, but those bigger pieces of equipment would come later if we are not able to get additional funding.
And is this potentially something that would occur over a longer period of time, 5 to 10 years, doing it in phases, or is that really not something we can answer right now?
I think it's a little hard to answer. I think that there's been a lot of support for this project in general, but it would be as funding allows. We're also getting ready to ramp up on the pros plan. And so this project will be part of that outreach, and that will be a great opportunity for us to see, okay, where does this fall in terms of priorities? If we were to have just one phase, like is it the top priority to finish phases 3 and 4, or are we looking at other parks? So, that effort will be really helpful for us to understand that priority.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think what we've seen tonight definitely gives us a vision for what it can be. So, let's see, is that it for this part of
That's
the?
it. You guys are champions. Thank you so much
Okay.
for listening to all of that. Was a lot of
Yeah.
content.
Thank you, Shelby and Kelly. This is very exciting. Like I said, gives us a vision for this playground, and I just thank you for all of the information. Thank you. Okay, where are we? So do we need, how long do you think the sports court conversation will? I shouldn't even ask that. Do we want a quick break or just power on to the sports court?
It's completely up to you. Presentation is like 8 slides, I think, so that'll be relatively quick, and it just really depends on input.
Okay, are we wanting a, yeah, 5-minute break? Let's do that. Okay, thanks. Okay, we are back, and the next item on the agenda is the sport court allocation and use policy. For this, we welcome back Recreation Manager Ryan Daly.
Good evening again. Share my screen very quickly. There we go. Just have a very, very brief presentation on the sport court allocation and use policy tonight. And then welcome commission input as we go forward, not looking, and this is you don't hear me say this all the time, but not looking for any decisions tonight. Really looking to get a response and feedback on the draft policy that's been put forth. For me to return likely in January would be the next opportunity to review. Let's see, I've got some stuff blocking my screen here. There we go. So tonight I'm gonna go over very briefly what a sport court use and allocation policy is, provide a little bit of background, and then walk through some of the components of the draft policy. All right, what is a sport allocation and use policy? It's a policy that establishes fair, consistent, and transparent guidelines for how sport courts are scheduled and used, defines priorities of use, criteria, and restrictions on reservations or permits, provides a clear framework for staff decision-making and also community understanding, reduces user conflict, overcrowding, and adverse impacts to other amenities and facilities. And I'll add in also impacts to programming that might be at those locations as well. Background, we have a number of courts across the park system. We have 8 pickleball courts at Luther Burbank Park. We have 4 tennis courts at Aubrey Davis Park, 4 tennis courts at Homestead Park, 2 tennis courts at Island Crest Park, and 1 standalone court at Roanoke Park. Currently, we only are offering reservations or permits for Homestead and Aubrey Davis Park. Additional background, currently we manage those courts absent a formal policy. General rules are posted at each facility to help users understand acceptable conduct, rotation expectations, and time limits. The courts host a variety of different users. Sometimes, rarely, they're permit holders. More often than not, it is drop-in based. Development of a sport court and allocation and use policy was identified in the Recreation Division's 2025-2026 work plan. And I was in front of the Parks and Recreation Commission on October 20th, receiving some initial input from the Parks and Recreation Commission on the development of the policy. Some key aspects to the draft policy that was put forward. We identified some key principles, guiding principles, and that was focused on community benefit, diverse use, and responsible stewardship of the facility. And the general policy highlights include drop-in use being the primary use for all courts. Courts may only be reserved for their designated activity type, so tennis for tennis courts, pickleball for pickleball courts. The director would determine scheduling availability, and there would be no reservations or events allowed at Island Crest Park or Roanoke Park. As we just talked about Island Crest Park, some of the limitations on parking play a key role to that decision. And then also we're putting forth a recommendation that city and Mercer Island School District uses be exempt from this policy and reviewed separately by the department director.
Ashley?
Commissioner Cohen, do you have a question?
Ryan, in this sport court permitted usage table, aren't the bottom 2 on the right? They're wrong, right? It shouldn't, drop-in is allowed at.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay.
That should say yes, you're correct.
Okay, thanks.
Excel gets me every time. Thank you for catching that. So to go over a couple of I just went over the general policy. Within this policy document, we break it out into a couple specific usages. Private reservations being one of those. And what this policy puts forth is limiting those reservations to 2 hours per group or instructor per day. Specifically, instructors or the group may not exceed 2 hours per day regardless of changing clientele. So say an instructor reserves a court, they only can reserve that for 2 hours. They can't reserve a court and then have multiple 2-hour sessions going on. And I see a question.
It's not about instructors, it's about groups. So in theory, could a group come in and reserve all the courts for 2 hours? A group, let's say you got together and you had 40 people, and could they come in and reserve all the courts?
Excellent question. That brings me to my third bullet point. Reservation availability and time would be determined by the department director. No, I can say that we would not allow in any aspect reservations for all of the courts. That would be considered a special event. What I'm anticipating for private reservations, this is groups that come in and want exclusive use of a court for a limited duration of time, generally 2 hours. What I'm anticipating the procedure or the process to be would be for the department director to establish specific times that would be allowed. I can tell you when it would not be allowed. Well, I actually put a sub-bullet there, and that would be during peak usage times. The primary focus of this policy is on drop-in use. What we're putting forth is there are going to be opportunities where we want to offer the ability to reserve court space. Part of that will, in staff's theory, will eliminate or reduce instructors coming forward and taking over or monopolizing courts by not having a permit. We're giving them an avenue to be in compliance with our policy. Now that will be very limited because we're not looking at private reservations to be a predominant use. And I'm not even thinking 50% of the time. I'm probably thinking somewhere around 10% of the time or available time. If I can give you a look into where staff's mind is on this.
No, I understand that. My concern is that given the explosive popularity of pickleball, that if you open the door a little bit, people game the system.
Right.
And so whatever we end up with, we need it to be tight enough to at least to head off.
That's absolutely on the procedure standpoint. For private reservations, the way we would look at doing it is very similar to how we do batting cages or athletic fields in sort of a unique way. We would be establishing specific courts, limited specific courts. So maybe 1 or 2 of the pickleball courts between the hours of, and I'm making this completely up, please don't hold me to it in any way, noon to 4 o'clock. I'm going to venture a guess that on a Tuesday from noon to 4 o'clock, that's not quite the peak time, right? So we would be able to allow those types of usages on those limited courts. We still are allowing predominantly drop-in play, but giving those instructors, or as Mr. Burstein mentioned earlier, my wife doesn't want to do paddle stacking, and this gives an avenue to other players to create that unique experience. Or we do have challenges at some times where people want to run their little 8-person tournament or exclusive use. This gives them an opportunity to be able to do so on a very limited basis.
Commissioner Struck?
Ryan, so the one question, and maybe you thought about this, but you say, you wanted a limit of 2 hours per group / instructor. So I'm thinking specifically of instructors. So what if there's 5 different instructors that all want 2 hours a day? I mean, have you thought about that? I mean, putting a limit on the number of instructors per day as opposed to
Or total hours.
They would more than likely, well, I can tell you 5 instructors aren't going to get enough time based on the 2-hour time. It just, the math won't work out that way. Because the blocks of availability for these reservations will be so tight. So you might end up with 1 or 2 instructors. Maybe that you could have potentially 2 instructors at the same time if they were both able to book in that area. One of the processes I would be putting forward for our team to work on would be not allowing reservations more, like you can't book a reservation more than a week ahead of time. So an instructor wouldn't be able to set up this clientele list, that it really limits it to the individuals, which tend to be more drop-in based, people coming together, more ad hoc to have the usage. If that kind of
Yeah,
makes sense
no,
of how we
that-
would be working that
Yeah,
to maintain the diverse access to the facility.
yeah, and that's helpful. I think where I was coming from is, the more clarity you can provide the community and users in general as to kind of, here's the rules of engagement.
Yep.
The less likely, either A, you're gonna be put in a kind of a compromising position potentially, but people just know that this is the deal.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions on private reservations? Yes.
Just given what Paul said today in his comments about pickleball, would we consider having it be a different time amount for pickleball as for tennis, and have it like be 1 hour slots? For example, if you're playing, I don't know, 20 pickleball games in an hour and you're just learning, that sounds like a lot to me.
So the clarification I kind of want to make is these are time blocks, right? So these are an individual is making this reservation as you would for an athletic field. It's a little bit different. This is completely separate of how the pickleball courts or tennis courts work in the drop-in atmosphere, where it's based on a number of points, paddle stacking, and rotation that way. Or with tennis, there's a different duration. We limit it to 45 minutes. We don't tend to have the same issues we have with pickleball. So those are on-court guidelines that dictate how drop-in use works. This would be specific to private reservation. So this is more so identifying the amount of time, the maximum amount of time we would allow an individual to have exclusive use of a court. If I articulated that appropriately. So to answer your question, Commissioner, I wouldn't recommend saying, well, tennis courts, you can only do 1 hour, and pickleball, you can only do 2. I would prefer to have them be the same, because it is a reservation base. Now, if they want to play points or they want to rotate within their own little group, that's their decision. The city's not dictating how that usage would work.
Owen?
I kind of was thinking the same thing as Jody, but I thought it was the opposite, that you were thinking that tennis would be longer. Yeah. And I think back, what was the name of one of the early park commissioners? Lynn, was it Gualtieri? She was a tennis instructor on the side. And I assume she was paid to do that. I don't know.
I'm not sure.
And it was sort of like, she always seemed like a responsible person who was very balanced in how she approached the issue. That pickleball hadn't come up yet.
Right.
But I guess I don't play either, but I wonder, but these policies tend to give the director sufficient discretion to deal with these things, and that's okay with me.
Yeah.
Councilmember Reynolds, do you have a comment?
Yeah, a couple of things. One, just I hate to be giving lessons to instructors on how to game the system, but I'm going to kind of do that. If an instructor has 10 students, what stops him from telling his students, okay, you all make a reservation back to back for 10 hours?
Well, you just let the cat out of the bag, council member. And this is honestly, this is the challenge that we will face, 100%. But if they wanted to do that, we would be looking at that, because we see all the reservations come through. We also, and this is maybe a point of pride for the recreation division, we're very connected. Way too many people do have my direct cell phone line when we do have things happening on the courts. we're able to get out there and have those communications with an instructor. And as the policy states, that's not allowed. The instructor is the person we're looking at. So we would know if that instructor is on site for more than 2 hours, thus they're not complying with the policy. This
Okay.
is the area where staff legwork would come into play. But we would find out about it through communications from other users.
Okay, that makes sense. And just philosophically remind me, during the pros plan process or anywhere else, was there any discussion made about whether commercial activity should be treated differently, period? I mean, if somebody's getting paid to use the courts, I kind of feel like we're subsidizing them if we give them free access to the courts. Should we be charging instructors to use the courts?
Oh, excellent question. So private reservations would be charged. So we would be treating them in the exact same way that we treat athletic fields. And again, I highlighted earlier, city-run programs would not be subject to this policy. What that gives us the ability to do is to go out and work with instructors or bring on an instructor if we felt there was a need to offer a low-cost subsidized type program for youth or for a specific age demographic. So we would go at that from a programmatic standpoint from the department. But specific to these private reservations, there would be a fee associated per hour, most likely per hour, for that exclusive use, whether it be commercial or private group play.
Okay, glad to hear that. Sorry if I missed that in reviewing the policy.
And Ryan, aren't we talking about only allowing reservations for a certain number of the courts?
Yes.
As well. Yeah. So we wouldn't have to worry about them all being booked because we're limiting it to a certain percentage of the courts.
Correct.
Right? Okay,
Correct.
great.
I will keep moving if I see 2 thumbs up. Thank you. So programs are another aspect of usage of the courts that we can foresee. So we talked about private reservation. This is sort of an additional element, operating more maybe similarly, but when you think about programs, think about an ongoing reoccurring usage. That could be a formal class or a league. What we're putting forward is not allowing those to occur on the Jake Jacobson pickleball courts at Luther Burbank during the same month period that we're talking about special events. The programs that would be submitted to us would need to demonstrate clear community benefit and alignment with Parks and Recreation goals as determined by the department director. And there's some significant limitations on these. They must be open registration or participation for the general public. So you can't go run your private company league. This would need to be open to the general public for anybody to participate. And it would be limited to 1 provider per week, 2 or less days per week for a maximum of 16 weeks per year. I honestly don't know how often this would occur, though one thing I have learned, and we've seen it with pickleball, specifically pickleball instructors, also tennis instructors, leagues can be a very lucrative opportunity to put forward. That's why I'm putting forward or recommending that there be some pretty significant limitations on that opportunity. Again, wouldn't be allowed during the peak summer months. Would have to have some pretty specific criteria met to be able to even consider offering that. Any questions on programs?
They're lucrative for the instructor, you mean?
They can be.
And
They could. There could be an opportunity. Yes, a business opportunity for individuals, which may serve a recreational purpose. We do have a lot of vendors that we do work with. Oftentimes, or the way we do our summer camps, the recreation division, enters into a contract with them and goes toward it with a bit more control than what this offers the opportunity for anybody to come forward, offer a singular league or something of that nature if it met the certain criteria. No questions? I will keep rolling. Oh,
I do have a quick question to how this would apply to some of the sports programs that are club type programs. How would this allow them to still be able to rent the space? Oh, wait, we're talking about just this, it wouldn't affect them, right? Because this is
That's a-
reservations versus
That's a good question.
that would be
That's-
treated as rentals?
No, it's an excellent question. This would limit any private organizations coming in, or call them third-party organization, anybody other than the city of Mercer Island. This would be the limitations on the amount of offerings we'd be able to allow.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you're thinking about, and this isn't something that's happening right now. Most of what we're seeing is more on the private reservation, individual hourly instruction, where the programmatic element comes in, or the program specifically. Those are things the city's already offering. So when you think about TGA tennis camp that we offer at Homestead Park, that's something that we coordinate that usage. So that would be separate this policy.
Okay, thanks.
The fun one, special events. As I mentioned, similar to programs, we would be not permitting this use during the months of July through August 31st at Luther Burbank Park. Again, must demonstrate a clear community benefit in alignment with Parks and Recreation goals, and would be limited to 3 or less per calendar year, 1 per 4-week period, and a maximum of 4 consecutive days per event. And I didn't mention this before, but requests would need to be submitted 45 days ahead. And as with programs, that gives us an opportunity to review what the usage is at the park sites, make sure that those impacts are as limited as possible, and also give us an opportunity to post signage and let people know if there's something that's going to somehow change or impact their drop-in use. So communication element is key there.
So the one question I have is on the maximum of 4 consecutive days per event. What has been I mean, you think about it in a week, so that they're saying they're going to take all the courts for 4 days. I mean, that, even though it's not July, August, I get that. I think that's appropriate, but is 2 or 3 days sufficient? I just don't know.
What was the Rotary experience?
The Rotary event was 3 days, so Friday through Sunday. I had included 4 days because I could see an opportunity. I don't want to encourage anybody to come rolling out, but there could be an opportunity for a Friday through Monday Labor Day weekend tournament. So that's kind of where my mind went, was when thinking about that 3-day weekend period. That could be, those 3-day weekends fall outside of predominantly those dates. So that's where my mind went. Running a tournament is a lot of work, as I believe Rotary found out as well. 4-day tournaments, I think, are probably fairly rare. I think you're looking at more commonly 2-day tournaments, right, rather than even 3 for the most part.
Let me ask you a question about the type of special event that could happen. And maybe this has never come up, but does the event have to involve the activities that would typically happen at the court? Like if somebody was like, I want to get married at the pickleball court, and I mean, do you want them to be doing the sport at the court?
That is an excellent question, and something we talked about. We do get a lot of requests. I shouldn't say a lot, but we do periodically get requests to use pickleball and tennis courts for sports or usages that aren't aligned with what they're designated for. This policy does require that the special event, the usage has to be for the designation of the court. So you mentioned a wedding, but I would kind of flip it the other way. Say an individual wanted to run a pickleball court. We're going through the process. They want to utilize the Luther Burbank pickleball courts, but it's a big tournament and they want to use the Homestead courts as well, and they want to put temporary lines. Under this policy, that wouldn't be permitted.
Okay.
So
yeah, I didn't see that specific call out. So I was trying to think like, yeah, to prevent something like that
Yes.
happening. It says in line with Parks and Rec goals, but not specific sport.
Yeah.
Or if you
Roller
wanna trade-
hockey is one that comes forward.
Exactly. Or
relatively
like roller
frequently.
hockey at the court. Or
We don't want rollerblades on our
Yeah,
courts.
exactly.
They're
Yeah.
very nice.
Great. Thank you.
Any other input on special events, questions? Does 3 feel okay? Three per calendar year, eliminating those 2 months. We do, and I'll get to this slide here in a second, but there is a number of disqualifying factors. I will say, I don't know. There's a lot of variables when a special event permit comes forward. And I'm going to speak maybe more to Luther Burbank in this aspect. Tournaments at Luther, there's sort of a two-way street here. Tournaments at Luther Burbank impact the Mercer Island Community and Event Center pretty significantly. Usage of the community center impacts the usage at the courts and parking as well. So there's a real balance that staff tries to strike. And there is some impacts financially and otherwise just to patronage if an event is happening at either one. So the community center generally books out almost a year ahead of time, especially for our large Mercer Room events on weekends. So I can say with being relatively certain, there's a number of dates I could look at the calendar for next year right now and say, no, that we wouldn't be able to permit a special event on those days. So there's some limitations any way you cut it here, just based on our facility access.
My only concern about 3 was, so you put, blackout months of July and August. Due to weather, you probably have 4 or 5 other months that are blacked out. So that leaves, let's say, 5 months of prime playing time that potentially you could tie up the courts for within a 4-week period. You could tie up the courts for 4 days.
Right.
And I don't know, I was sort of tossing that back and forth thinking, do we want to do that or not? I mean, it's not about the money. It's about access. And right now those courts are getting hammered. With public use. So I don't know. I was leaning more toward 2.
If I could respond, I agree. There's sort of 2 parts to my answer here. I agree. I think limiting special events at the courts, there's a real staff impact to offering those, and so I'm looking at it maybe from a little bit different angle as well. There's a real staff impact there. There's an impact to the users, obviously, as you were stating. The financial aspect, as you correctly stated, these courts would have an appropriate rate attributed to them. When the courts are functioning, the Mercer Room wouldn't be. So and I would expect any tournament that anybody who wants to run a tournament being limited, you're a year out, right? You're booking that a year out. That's similar to how the community center books. The Mercer Room, I can guarantee, is going to bring in a larger revenue amount than a pickleball tournament for sure. So that I'm in agreement on the revenue side, on the impacts. I would look to the commission on the number of events that we feel comfortable prioritizing would be the best way to put it.
Commissioner Struck?
I think Commissioner Westberg kind of mentioned 2, and I'm fine with that.
Commissioner Cohen?
Two what? Which one are you talking
2
about?
special events.
Oh, I would be comfortable decreasing the 4 consecutive days, at least to 3, and if it, after the first year or two, there's all these opportunities for, long weekend like you were talking about, then change the policy. If you think it's important.
If I can respond real quick, that I agree. We're having a conversation. We started a conversation last meeting about athletic field usage policy, right? One of the things we're committed to doing is coming back with these policies, reviewing them so that we can make appropriate alterations. Perhaps starting smaller and growing if needed is a much better decision than starting too big and then trying to walk it backwards. I would look to the commission on your feel, and we're talking about one summer and being able to make these adjustments very, very quickly, which I'm committed to coming back to the commission and reporting out on every event that we offer so that we can review the policy in conjunction.
Yeah, I'm also in favor of 2 per calendar year and 3 consecutive days.
Can I
And if
get
we
a-
need to change that in the future.
Just a thumbs up
great.
would be perfect
Thumbs
for,
up.
okay, I got a lot of thumbs. So 2 and 3 days maximum.
Mhm.
Okay. Our park maintenance team thanks you, as do I. And this was the table that was in front of you that was incorrect. I will be cleaning that up, but wanted to provide just what that kind of looks like. So these would be yeses here. Or no, where am I? Drop in right here. This would be yes. Yeah.
By the way, I'm okay with this, but what's the rationale for no special events at, or no reservations, no this and that at Island Crest and Roanoke? Is that parking?
Parking was a big component of that. Island Crest runs that's a tournament location to begin with for the athletic fields. So offering any kind of a tournament there would be really, really challenging. Also trying to prioritize that drop-in access. That's the only location that has lights. So you're able to, as a drop-in participant, kind of come whenever. Tends to be Island Crest, just in my experience, Island Crest and Roanoke have been, I don't want to let it out public, island secrets maybe?
And they're kind of neighborhood.
They're more neighborhood based, where Homestead and Aubrey Davis tend to have a little bit more ongoing usage. And just some disqualifying criteria we added into this policy or recommending as well. The request, a request or reservation may be declined if the request is not compatible with the facility requested. Facilities are unavailable, not in suitable condition, or if adjacent facilities have incompatible uses. Request impacts access or operation of the park, other scheduled activities, or adjacent facilities or residences. Permit holder fails to follow payment deadlines or permit terms. The requester previously failed to comply with those terms, and the usage does not seek to advance the sense of community health, wellness, or safety of the public, or that is inconsistent with the Recreation Division's mission to enhance the livability for all Mercer Island residents. So fairly encompassing. But with that is the end of my slide deck almost. Next steps would be I will return with some updates to the policy. It'll go through a legal review. And I will return to the Parks Commission we're planning on the January meeting, and seek to have this policy in place by Q1 of 2026.
So we are now at the last item of business, absences and commissioner reports. Commissioners, do you have anything to report, including planned absences? Commissioner McCarthy?
I just wanted to say how I appreciated that the MI Rowing Club coming and giving us clarification tonight about what they need. And hopefully we can continue to support them, because that is, it sounds like that's really in the sweet spot that we're missing out for helping kids on the island in terms of it being grade 8 and up. And the teens are the ones that really get lost in the programming for the Parks Department. Thanks.
Commissioner Cohen?
Well, as long as Jody made that comment, I'll say again, as I emailed to the chair and she mentioned last time that at the moment, I'm going to have serious problems with having a rowing program with the kind of activities that the gentleman talked about at the north end of Luther Burbank. So again, I don't want to debate it now, but I don't want to have somebody who's looking at the tape have any misconception about that there's unified views on this, regardless of the importance of it or lack of importance of it. So. One other thing. Councilmember Reynolds, are you going to be leaving the commission shortly or not as the liaison? When is that done? I read something.
That will be up to the new mayor, and we won't know the new mayor until January. So sometime after that.
Okay, because we may not be having a meeting in December, and at an appropriate time, if you are no longer the liaison, we'll have to put together a roast.
That will be welcome, but don't worry about me. One way or another, we can do it informally outside the meeting if I don't get another chance. But I suspect I'll be here for at least the first meeting in January, but who knows? But if for some reason I'm not, thank you. You guys are a credit to the city with all the great work you do.
Okay, and Commissioner Bretman did email us prior to the meeting to let us know that she would not be in attendance. So commissioners, may I have a motion to excuse Commissioner Bretman's absence from tonight's meeting?
So moved.
Seconded?
Second.
Great. Do we need to call the roll on that? Yep. Can we call the roll, please?
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Cohen,
Aye.
Commissioner Struck,
Aye.
Commissioner McCarthy,
Aye.
Commissioner Markson,
Aye.
Vice Chair Westberg,
Aye.
Chair Hay.
Aye.
Thank you, Chair.
Motion passes. The next Parks and Recreation Commission meeting is a special joint hybrid meeting with the Open Space Conservancy Trust on November 12th, 2025 at 5 p.m. The time is now 7:39 p.m. and the meeting is adjourned. However, as a reminder to commissioners, please stay seated until the city staff has terminated the Zoom broadcast. Good evening and thank you for joining us.